Hello and welcome to episode 89 of the Synergen Leadership Podcast. For those of you who are listening in for the first time, my name is Julian and I'm the CEO and the co-founder of Synergen Group. I'm passionate about all things leadership and management. So passionate, in fact, that I decided to start a podcast about it, and here we are in season 2, and my purpose for the podcast continues to be the same, to raise the standard of leadership. Today's show, I speak with Julia Steele, who is the author of Buy-In, How to Lead Change, Build Commitment, and Inspire People. Over the last 2 decades, Julia has worked with leaders around the world to plan and execute strategy in their business. She knows that frameworks and PowerPoint are not enough to deliver results on their own, that success depends on the buy-in of their people, their ability to deliver and lead change. In short, Julia helps leaders and teams deliver bigger and better. It may be bigger ambitions for the organisation, grand ideas that as a leader are looking to implement, or need to get ready for significant change ahead. Her clients consistently tell her they are looking for one thing: progress. Everyone wants to be better, move faster, and work smarter to deliver results that matter. And when organisations and people struggle to execute, it affects confidence, and at every level, values like trust, passion, and integrity are replaced with tension, frustration, and ultimately unable to deliver results. Now, during the course of the conversation, we explore her book in detail. I start by asking Julia, why did she decide to write the book? We speak about what buy-in looks like and why does it matter. We discuss the Competence Killers and Confident Competence. And I finish the interview by asking Julia about why engagement isn't enough and how we build commitment. So keep listening. As always, really like to hear your thoughts about the interview with Julia Steele, author of Buy-In, How to Lead Change, Build Commitment, and Inspire People. Happy listening.
Welcome to the Synergen Leadership Podcast with Julian Carl. Julian returns in 2019 with weekly conversations with leaders and authors from Australia and around the world, giving you the opportunity to share in their journey and learn from their expertise and knowledge. Julian also shares some of the tools and techniques he uses as a leader, mentor, and facilitator, helping you to build your leadership capability and improve your confidence as a leader.
Well, welcome, Julia, to the Synergen Leadership Podcast. Really appreciate you actually coming out to HQ and hanging out with me so that everyone has a bit of an idea of who you are. Who is Julia Steele?
Thanks for having me. I had a 20-year career in IT and tech, largely as a program manager, so I'm inherently a delivery person. Stepped away a couple of years ago to start my own practice. Now work as a speaker, trainer and coach, helping other people deliver great ideas. And I think we're all trying to do more, lead bigger change, bigger transformation. And so I wrote Buy-In to help other leaders do that.
Okay. So we're here today to talk about your book, Buy-In, How to Lead Change, Build Commitment and Inspire People. Why, I suppose, did you decide to write the book? Because I've written one myself and it's not an easy thing to do. So why did you decide to write one?
I think if I reflect back on many of the ideas, the projects, the leaders that I've worked with over my career, it's very easy to say we've got a good idea. It's almost the easy bit. And then you go off and you deliver that idea and then you wonder why it feels harder than you were expecting. And my biggest learning is, projects, change, strategy. It's all about the people that are in and around you when you're delivering it. So the more you can get their buy-in, the more you can take them on the journey, the better off you'll be. I like to think of it as the fuel in the engine. Like the idea is the engine, but without the fuel and the people pumping energy into it, the engine doesn't go as quickly as you want. So I wrote the book to share some learnings, hopefully encourage people to think about how they get others on board with what they're trying to do, and just bring a different conversation to the table other than just frameworks and processes, which is normally what people look at when they're delivering change.
So I want to start off with a bit of an excerpt, if I can, and it's from your introduction. With so many opportunities around us, succeeding today should be easy. It's not. We're surrounded by the conflicting priorities, ideas, and needs of others, and of course, we all have our own opinions and needs too. But what makes people care about you and your ideas over someone else's? What helps them align with your vision and get involved even when they don't have to? In simple terms, what makes them get behind you and your idea is buy-in. So my question on that is, why is it so important to get people behind you?
I think there's two schools of thought, and I've worked for some fabulous leaders over the years, but they were quite dictatorial, sort of like this is the strategy, here's the idea, this is what we're doing, get on with it. And yes, there are instances where that worked, but when you look at organisations now, and there's challenges with engagement and trust, and people are feeling less motivated than they have in the past, you sort of go, well, why do you want people to help you? You can deliver it on your own. It takes a Herculean effort to deliver a good idea on your own. So why make it hard for yourself? Get others around you, get them helping you, bring some energy and some ideas to the table. You're actually quite surprised when you have a good idea, you bring other people to the conversation, and it suddenly gets a better idea, because everyone helps everyone. And I know many leaders that have tried to deliver things on their own, and when it doesn't work, it's a very lonely, sometimes not a good place to be from a career perspective either.
Yeah. So you write about something called the Commitment Conundrum. What is the Commitment Conundrum?
How much commitment do you need? Who do you need it? Who do you need it from? Do you go it alone? Do you wait for others to catch up? I think the two biggest parts of commitment is, how do you get people to trust what you're doing, and how do you win their trust back? And the conundrum to me is often when you just want to get going. So I've got a great idea. If I don't start doing something now, it'll be late, or it won't get to market on time, or we'll miss the opportunity. I'm just going to leave everyone behind and start running. Or do you wait for them to catch? Do you actually wait for them to catch up? That's the conundrum. And what can you do to help them accelerate as quickly as you can, build that trust in your idea ASAP, rather than running and then looking behind you and realising there's no one else there.
Yeah, it becomes a real challenge, doesn't it, getting people on the bus with you? Yeah,
I think, and I'm definitely been burnt from decisions I've made in the past where just like, well, they just don't get it. I'll show them. I'll just get on with it and prove to them that I'm right. It doesn't work out. It doesn't work out that way, in my experience. So, it's really, how do you take people with you? It's like crossing a bridge. I think I use that metaphor in the book. You cross the bridge because it's your idea. It's easy for you to cross the bridge. You trust it because it's your idea. How do you get everyone else to cross the bridge, get on the bus? There's lots of metaphors that you can use, but we all need to be moving in the same direction together.
Okay. So what does buy-in actually look like?
I think it's probably easier to say what it doesn't look like, and then I think what it doesn't look like is isolation, frustration, hard work. To me, the more people that are on board with your idea, the easier things feel. It validates your idea almost. That if you're bought into it and then you see other people buying into it, then it by default makes it a better idea. Or it helps you. Yeah, it gives you an indication that you're onto something that actually should be explored more. If you think you've got a good idea and then you turn around and there's no one else there, you're going, well, what is it? Is it me that they're not bought into? Is it the idea that they're not bought into? Have I not talked to them enough? And there's lots and lots of things for people to do at the moment. So how do you get them to pick yours and work with you, collaborate with you, and just really move things forward. I was talking to a leader the other day who says, I don't have a sponsor for my project. What should I do? And I said, put your project on hold. And he goes, but if I put the project on hold, I won't have a job because my job is to lead the project. And I was like, but you won't have a job if you lead the project and it fails. Anyway, so you've got to make a choice. Do you want people to work with you on this, or do you want to be selfish and try and do it on your own?
Okay. And why is it so important that we get this buy-in? So why does buy-in matter?
I think to me, buy-in's almost getting it's almost like a sales pitch, because of what we were talking about, some of what we talked about before. So do you want to be seen as a leader that's dictating things to people, who's trying to control the destiny of where things go to the extent that no one else has a say? Or do you want to be a leader that goes, this is what I think we should do. What do you guys think? I'd love your input. I'd love you to help me deliver this so that we all get the result rather than just me standing on my own. And there's very few ideas out there that have been delivered by one person. Doesn't matter whether you look at the traditional companies everyone talks about in the US, the Airbnbs, the Facebooks, the Microsofts, or whether you're, an independent small business. Everyone needs people around them to deliver great ideas.
So in chapter 1, which is titled Confidence, which is, I think, one of the most important things a leader needs to have.
Yep.
And you talk about this idea of believing in yourself or no one else will.
Yes.
So my question around that is, how do leaders start to almost self-assess if they are, to do have that sense of self-belief?
This chapter is actually quite a personal one for me to write. And when I look at all of the chapters that we talk about, and I split the book into 3 parts. So buying into yourself, buying into your team, buying into your idea. The buying into yourself, the leadership piece is, if you don't have the self-belief enough to carry your idea, it doesn't matter how good your idea is, they're just not going to buy into you. And I had a great manager work for me 4 or 5 years ago, and he was really struggling to make progress in the business. He was quite frustrated, and he's like, what am I doing wrong? And I was like, your challenge is that when you speak, because he's quite introverted, didn't necessarily have the self-belief in himself that even though his ideas, his comments were good, the way he was coming across actually put people off. And I think having confidence in yourself is sort of like conviction, right? People look for, if I can see that you believe it, then maybe I should believe it as well. Whereas if I came to you with an idea, go, I'm not really sure this is the right thing to do, or I haven't even got the confidence to say that to you, then it's a sort of, you're not going to start making the progress that you want before you've even started. Right? Things will stall. So I think I talk about people buying to the leader before they buy into the idea. In the book, it's the same thing.
Okay. And you also give people a bit of a framework for how to get their belief, self-belief, just right.
Yes, just right.
So at a high level, are you able to walk them through those key topics?
Yeah, I think I talk about Goldilocks and the 3 bears a little bit, and that's where the just right comes from. And you can have too much confidence, too little confidence, and you just want it to be right. And to me, you don't want to be the arrogant, overconfident person in the same way you don't want to be the underconfident person. But the steps that I talk through is, what do you stand for? What do you feel good about? What do you not feel good about? Actually, just getting you to self-reflect a little bit on where you are, what you know, what you don't know. I've spoken to a few leaders that I coach over the years, and there's a lot of leaders miss the vulnerability to explore what's impacting their confidence, and they just sort of say, "Oh, I'm just going to pretend that I'm confident," and then not actually do anything about what backs it up.
So I'm curious to explore this idea of, influence versus being influential. So what's the difference?
So this was a bit of a nirvana moment for me in my career. So about 4 or 5 years ago, I did a class at Stanford in the US, a power course. So the class was actually called Power. And at the time, I was in quite a politically charged environment at work, and a lot of powerful people, which you can interpret as influential, were trying to change things, and it was not a nice environment to work in, and there's a lot of people trying to influence a lot of things for their own agendas. And in this power course, and some of the reading that I did afterwards, they said if you actually change your mindset from it being about power to actually it's just about influencing behaviour change, it actually takes a lot of the energy out of that power politics conversation. And so having influence is normally seen as power where you are on the hierarchy, whether you've got a seat at the table. Whereas if you actually go, I could be influential just by changing your behaviour, right? And in the book I talk about the Parkland school shootings in the US, and this group of students took on Donald Trump, organised one of the largest rallies since the peace rallies in the 70s. Yet before they did that, they were just students. And in the space of a year, they went from students to being on the front cover of Time magazine because they were able to influence people's behaviour to go to the rally. They weren't powerful, but they were able to influence behaviour change.
You talk about courage and fear. And it's interesting to put those two together because often, it takes, courage to overcome your fear.
Yes.
So why is this something that leaders should be thinking about, this idea of courage and fear?
I think most ideas, particularly good ones, involve you stepping into a place that you're not necessarily at the moment. So if you're running a business, you might be stepping into a new market or offering a new product or working with a different industry, hiring new people. There's lots of things with ideas that involve you doing something new. And with that new comes a level of uncertainty. And that uncertainty generally creates some sort of fear. Now, it may be fear in yourself because you're going, shit, is this the right thing to do? But it also creates fear in people around you, right? Your staff may go, well, this is something unfamiliar to us. So courage to me is recognizing that that's what you're doing, but you've got to keep stepping forward. I think there are many, many good ideas that we probably never see just because on the journey to it, someone's gone, no, it's too risky, or I'm not sure it's the right time, or we haven't got the skills, or there's reasons why the idea hasn't gotten traction. I'm not saying we should do every idea either, but for the ideas that matter for your business, you've got to buy into them and keep embracing that fear to get to the other side.
Mm. And it's about stretching out of your comfort zone, isn't it?
Yeah, I think if every organisation did ideas that were safe, they're the easy ones to do. But your organisations don't change. Yes, there's some that you have to do to keep the lights on, to keep your existing business running. But where's the stretch? What are you going to buy into that's bigger than what you're already doing?
People will often say that, leadership's lonely, for want of a better phrase, and you talk about this idea that you don't have to face everything alone. So how do people make sure that they're not falling into that trap of, just trying to do it all themselves?
I fell into this trap of doing it all myself, and I'm very, quite reflective on the impacts that it had on me personally, like from a stress perspective, from a work-life balance perspective, from how I was seen and perceived by my team. It's just that they saw the feedback that I had afterwards was, you're trying to do too much, you need to let us help. And I thought I was actually role modelling the other behaviour, which is if I show I'm committed, then everyone else will be committed. And people actually said, no, you're actually pushing too hard. Let us help. And I think in terms of not having to face everything, it's recognising what you can do and what you can't. And when no one's perfect. It doesn't matter where you are in the hierarchy of an organisation. There's always things that we don't know. There's always things that we can improve. And taking a moment to recognise that and go, actually, there's part of this idea that I don't understand. Now your choices are, well, I can learn. I can go and find someone that does know and work with them. You can bring people in to your organisation, get some advice from externals. There's lots of things that you can do to explore and get other people's buy-in on whether your idea is a good one. But pushing ahead, regardless, going, it will be all right, mate, in that old Aussie way, it doesn't actually serve anyone in the long run. And I did some work in the US and went to X, which is the moonshot factory that Google is attached to Google, and they're the people that created the drones and did all of that sort of fantastic stuff. And they have a motto which is, run at the hardest problem first. And I think actually that's a really, really nice, really nice way of framing it. If you've got an idea and it feels scary, what's the hardest bit of it? Right, so don't look at the whole idea. What's the bit that you really need to answer? And who do you need to help you answer that question? And in answering that question, you then understand that you've got everything else that you need.
Okay. You talk about this idea of clarity, and I think it's an interesting one worth exploring, because I often reflect on the leaders that we work with, how many of them have the opportunity to reflect and get that sense of clarity. So specifically, what do you think leaders should be thinking about when they try to get some clarity, and what process can they undertake, or what are the challenges that they're going to face?
So talk about clarity in the book, more about how do you get other people on board and with you. And I think sometimes ideas are pitched and then people don't draw the line back to the strategy or what it means to you as a leader. And so when I sat down and wrote the clarity chapter, it was very much to sort of say, don't just make your idea about your idea. Attach it to what you stand for as a leader. Give people the clarity of what that idea contributes to you. So what's your vision? So yes, the idea is the solution generally, but what's your vision? What vision are you attaching it to? What does it mean to you as a leader? So if you look at some successful ideas, it's generally got quite a personal meaning to the leader that's leading it. If it's a new market that you're launching into, what is it about that market that appeals to you as a leader? Because people will follow you. They don't follow your idea, they follow you. So you've got to give them that clarity of what you stand for. And some very simple things are, what do you stand for as a leader? Where are you going? Why does the idea matter to you and your business? But yet we often just go sort of straight into solution mode. Here's the idea. Let's forget about positioning it in a strategic sense. Let's just start doing. And it just becomes work. It actually dilutes the opportunity, I think.
Okay. What are these competence killers that you talk about? As soon as I read that, I thought, I need to know what these are. I need to know what they are. What are they?
So I had a great mentor, Mary, a while ago, and we talk about talked about competence and being good at things, and competence to me is another way of people buying into you. So you're more likely to buy into someone if you can see that they're competent. It's a level of trust. It was on the journey for them to trust you, and competence killers are things that detract from your competence. So I had a great leader once a few years ago, and his name I won't share because I don't want to embarrass him, but he was a very technical guy, but was now in a leadership role, and even though there were technical people in the team, he made whose job it was to define the solution. He would sit at the table and make these technical judgments on their behalf, and sometimes they were right and sometimes that they weren't. But I call them competence killers because you're trying to do the right thing, but people actually see you as incompetent as a result. And in that situation, sort of stop answering for them. Recognize who you've got at the table and give them the space to be competent. And there's not many ideas that are delivered by one person. You need lots of different people around the table. So how do you don't kill that competence by not asking questions, by not giving them space to have input, and listen and learn from them. Don't just shut that IP, that competence, that skill out. And some of the, particularly now with the millennial generation and others rising through the ranks, there's a lot of knowledge that I think experienced leaders can get if they just embraced the competence of other people and put their own ego aside and listened. And so that's what I call a competence killer.
Mm. And on the back of these killers, you talk about this idea of a confident competence.
Yeah, I think I think we all talk about what do we know. We all know things. We all have competence. There's some things that we're absolutely confident and competent about, and then there's other things that we like to think that we are, where we just we're kind of winging it. Let's face it, we kind of wing it. So I think being really clear on what you know, and what you don't. Mary, my mentor that I mentioned a few years ago, she gave me a really good piece of advice, which I still stand by, which is every time something comes up that you don't know or you don't understand, write it down. And it's almost like a to-learn list instead of a to-do list. And on that to-learn list is then the things that you go away and you find answers to. And I find particularly in businesses, there's a lot of meetings happen. Things come up in those meetings that people around the table may not understand, but people don't ask because they don't want to look like an idiot, or they don't want to detract from the meeting, or they don't want to, admit that they don't know. Yet they never leave the meeting and then go and follow up. Can you explain that more to me? Or I'm really interested in what you said. Can you help me understand that some more? And so this confidence, competence sounds a bit of a mouthful, but it's how do you actually get confidence that you know what you're talking about and you're not just leaving grey areas because you're just not interested or haven't made the time to go and learn.
You suggest that we need to really make sure that we're credible.
Mm-hmm.
So why does credibility matter?
If I think about, not just in a business sense, but just generally in life, who do we buy from? Who do we bank with? Who do we get our mortgages with? What cars do we drive? We all inherently pick brands, work with people that we trust, and the same is no different. It's no different in leadership, right? So if you've got a great idea, people have got to trust the idea, and they've got to trust you. And credibility is inherently trust. to me. And I talk about 4 levels of credibility that come out of Stephen Covey's book, The Speed of Trust. He talks about integrity, intent, capability, and results. So yes, you have to build credibility over time. It's not something that you automatically have, but how do you build credibility in your ideas? So what's the integrity of it? Are you delivering it for your own career goals? Is it so you can get promoted and look good against everyone else? Is it because you actually want to radically change your business? You want to, improve things for your customers? Are you doing the idea for the right reason? In the intent of it, what are you trying to do? I ran a project a few years ago where the story that was told was it was about growing the business. But if you actually look at the reasons why they were doing the project, it was obviously bottom line. So and people see straight through that, right? You get that icky taste in your mouth. People can smell it a mile off. Yet we continue to think if we paint a story of what our intent is, people will believe it, and that just degrades the credibility. Then I talk about capability. So I've seen some great leaders pitch ideas, try and deliver projects, but they just don't have the capability to do it, either as a leader or with the team, right? So how do you go and build the capability that you need to do that? And then the last one is results. So you don't get credibility by not delivering. So sooner or later, doesn't matter how big your idea is, someone will want to see your results, either the employees, your customers, your shareholders, your partners. If you're running a business, the outcome needs to appear, and that's why I think credibility matters. Some great ideas may start in the right place, but if you put integrity, intent, capability, and results somewhere across those 4, things start to go pear-shaped, and credibility goes with it.
One of the things which I personally found really valuable was your, what do you call it, a test or a framework or a model quiz for assessing how credible your idea is. And I thought this would be really useful to try to talk through in a little bit more detail, because I do think often, and I know, for example, myself, I'm probably someone that is some people see me as an ideas type person, so, but I think this is going to be really useful for someone like me, because I can sort of pull back and So you just talk through this framework, a quiz, a little bit more for us?
Yeah, sure. I think if I use the four areas that I mentioned before, so integrity, intent, capability, and results. The integrity questions are, I'll pick the first one. I've made up the story that I think others will believe about this idea, or I'm being honest with other people about why my idea exists. And if I use the example of the project before, they made up a story about the project being about growth, but people saw straight through it. They smelt the rat, and it was like, no, this isn't about growth. This is actually about cost out, bottom line. So they weren't being completely honest with people. Other things on the list are things like, how does your idea tie into what the organisation's doing more broadly? So it's easy to say, as a leader, I've got this great idea, but it doesn't have any integrity if your idea is to create Airbnb, yet your organisation sells phones. Yeah. So how does it actually, there's the integrity of the idea and the idea in the context of your organisation. Intent is more about why are you doing it? So are you delivering the idea to achieve your annual objectives, or is there a bigger vision that you have? And that goes back to some of the clarity pieces that I talked about before. Is the idea a stepping stone to something bigger, or is it a band-aid that you need to put over a part of your business that's hurting. And I just put these questions in here because I think it actually I've reflected on a lot of projects and things that I delivered when I wrote these questions. And there's a few projects that I thought actually I would have reframed them so that they had more credibility. And the capability piece is, I think we're all optimists sometimes, particularly when it comes to delivering ideas. The idea is so great that we forget about whether we can what we actually need to be able to deliver it. And have we got the right one end of the spectrum? You go and find the skills that you need, and the other end of the spectrum is you make do, and it's actually counterproductive. If you've got a great idea and then you don't go and find the people to turn it into that great idea, you're not going to get a great idea. At the end of it, you'll end up with a half-assed, vanilla, made-do version of your ideas. So, the questions in the capability section is, I have the capabilities to lead successfully. I'm confident that we have the skills and the talents needed to do it. And it's not saying that you shouldn't do it, but just make a conscious choice of go and find the people, or if you need time to go and find them or build the capabilities of allow yourself as a leader and as a business to do that. Don't set yourself aggressive timelines. Try and climb Mount Everest when you've only got provisions to get to base camp.
Yeah, I think what it does is it really gives you some depth of thinking around your idea, which I think is really important. Yeah,
and then the last one's really about results. And I had a good friend a long time ago now. There's one leader in the organisation that we work for who doesn't matter what the idea was, didn't matter what the project was, he always got the money. Right, and people are like, this is just captain's call. He's got the ear of the CEO. How does this guy, his ideas weren't even good, but he still got the money. And it's like, because he delivers, right? He does what he says he's going to do, and people, if you have a strong track record, people will go, well, he did it last time, he'll do it next time. She's delivered that project well, or that idea was on the money, so I'm going to trust her again to do this idea. And I think we forget that we need to be credible as leaders, and our ideas need to be credible too. And a credible idea with a leader that hasn't got credibility isn't going to get the traction that they need. And that's why I talk about how do you get that buy-in, because people will buy into you.
You also talk about this idea of connection.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about connection.
So I'm absolutely fascinated by marketing. And someone said to me a few years ago that I'm a great marketer. And I was like, but I'm a project director. And she said, but you do a really good job in marketing your projects. I help people connect with what it is that I'm delivering. And I've delivered a lot of technology-based projects in my career, which are about left brain, logical scope. We talk about tools and processes and systems, boring for people to listen to. So how do you actually help them connect and turn that technology or whatever it is that you're delivering into something that people want to hear? And there's a lot of research out of the US that I think 90% of business decisions and human behavior is driven by emotion, not by logical decision making. And yet we still generally pitch our ideas in dollars and cents. We talk about scope, we talk about solutions, we talk about strategy. We don't actually share a whole heap of stories that help people connect with them. And so the connection section is really about what are the stories you can tell to help people connect with your idea. And quick story I'll share to prove the point is I led a large technology transformation a few years ago. When I was given it, that's how it was sold to me, and you sort of go, I'll roll your eyes, here's another technology transformation. It was the 4th or 5th that the organisation had done in 10 years. Everyone could still remember the last one. You go, well, why are we actually doing it? And they said, oh, well, we're doing it because the orders take too long. I was like, well, what does that mean? It's like, oh, well, it means the customer is expecting it at this time frame, and it actually takes 3 times as long. Okay, go and find me a customer. Why do you want a customer? So we've got the customer to come in and ask them to share their story about what it was like to use the system that we were replacing. And as soon as the customer came in and said, hi, my name's Sarah, I run a small business based in Toowoomba. Last week I tried to order something for my business that I thought would take 2 to 3 days. 3 weeks, 15 calls later, I haven't got the service, I haven't got this, I haven't been able to deliver to my customers because you haven't delivered to me. As soon as that story went to the executive, everyone was like, oh, like it just connected. It was not about the system anymore. It's about the customer's details, the customer's order in the system, and getting people to connect with Sarah rather than the system moved our program forward a whole heap.
So you talk about this idea that engagement is not enough. Why is engagement not enough?
So I talk about engagement in the context of stakeholders, and I think if there's one part of delivery where people that I just think it needs an overhaul is stakeholder management. So we talk about we need to manage our stakeholders, we need to engage people, but to me that just feels like a transaction. It's like I need to engage you. Here's some information, I've engaged you. Here's a report, I've engaged you. But it doesn't actually tell me whether you've received that. It's like I'm transmitting a message, but I don't know whether I've received it. And so I talk in the book about engagement's not enough. I've actually got to get a response back, right? I need to know whether you're bought in to my idea. I need to know whether you're going to help. I need to know that we can have a conversation in a meeting and that we're on the same page, not that you leave and go and do something else or have a conversation at the water fountain that says something else. And I think we're all so busy that it's easy to see engagement as a box ticking exercise. So I need to engage my stakeholders. I sent them an email and told them what's going on. That's not engagement. That's not buy-in. That's just communication. And so engagement isn't enough. It's we need to be collaborating, working together, partnership, talking, and all the other things I talk about in the book. Engagement's not enough.
And I sort of almost want to finish up with this idea of how do we go about building commitment?
I talk about 2 sides. We covered both of them already, but I'll bring them together. So if you look at commitment as the credibility piece that we talked about earlier, and then the connection piece. And you can be the most trusted person in the room, but if people aren't connected with you or the idea, you're still not going to get their commitment. Or you could have really strong relationships with people and be well connected with people, but if you don't have the credibility, you're not going to get their commitment. So talk about building commitment is you need both. You need the left brain credibility, my idea's good to go, I'm good to go, you're buying into me. And then you need people to go, actually, I feel like this is the right thing to do. And I love watching love watching Shark Tank. Yeah. And it's a perfect example of this. So there's so many times I've watched Shark Tank where people go, love your idea, not feeling you. And they don't get the money. Yeah. I've seen many episodes where people go, actually, your idea's crap, but there's something about you. So they feel that connect, like they can see that there's a spark or a fire in the person, then they'll give them the money, not to do the idea, but to do something else. So you need both. And building commitment is an accumulation of everything that we've talked about. But a lot of people don't ask for commitment. We sort of take it for granted that we, if we actually say, are you on board? Are you committed to this? It actually makes people think, am I? And sometimes that answer might be, well, kind of, or no, I'm not. So what do you do to get them bought in?
Okay. Are there any books, people, leaders in particular that inspire you?
Lots. Look, I look across a few different areas for inspiration. Personally, particularly with the courage and the fear angle, I'm a massive reader of Brené Brown. I know many others are too. A lot of what I read through buy-in goes back to what I said earlier about I'm really interested in marketing. And you look at Seth Godin and Purple Cow, and it's actually a really nice way of framing what we do, right? When we have an idea, it's essentially an early product that we're trying to get people bought into, right? So we're doing the early marketing on an idea. I think, and then I just read a lot of leadership books. So anything that's on strategy and execution, or strategy execution is one of my favorite books. I just love anything where we've got CEOs, experienced leaders sharing the war stories about their trials and tribulations with executions. I find fascinating.
Okay. If people want to find out more about you, where should they go?
I'm in all the usual places online. So I've got a website at juliasteele.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, all the usual social media channels. I've got a newsletter called Nez of Steel, which I get to every fortnight. So if people want to subscribe, they can do that through my website too. But yeah, based in Melbourne, work around Australia and Asia Pacific. And any leaders that are looking to deliver change better in their organisation, love to speak to them. Okay.
So any last words on leadership and change?
I think there's a lot of throwaway lines at the moment. You know, the world's changing faster. There's more change than ever before. Change is the new normal. And it's like, yes, they're all correct, but we are inherently all still individuals. We're all leaders. We're all team members. We're all employees. So, let's cut some of the headlines and just go, actually, no one's going to lead your idea other than you. And so how do you get people on board with that? How do you inspire them? How do you get their commitment and ultimately be the business that delivers what they say they're going to do? That's what we're talking about, right? We don't want to put a big idea up on a pedestal and then go, well, we gave it a red hot go, but didn't work out so well. Everyone wants to be able to say that they've delivered what they said they would.
On that note, Julie Steele, thank you so much for being part of the podcast.
Excellent. Thank you.
Well, that wraps up episode 89 of the Synergen Leadership Podcast, another great author interview episode for you. I'd like to encourage you to head on over to the Synergen Group website and engage in the conversation with us. Tell us what you liked about the episode, tell us who you'd like us to interview, or tell us what sort of content you'd like us to deliver to. And if you are an iPhone user, please feel free, head on over to the Apple site and leave us a review. It really does help us build awareness of the podcast. In next week's episode, I'm going to introduce the idea of managing risk as another curriculum ecosystem episode. So it is another great episode. Until then, love to hear what you think. Happy listening.